Casey Childs, welcome to the Undraped Artist Podcast.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, it's good to finally have you, and
Yeah,
I'm glad you didn't drive all the way over here again this time.
yeah, yeah. It's good that we finally made this happen. That was my fault. How many months ago was
I
that?
don't
That was
think so. I don't know. It was like 6 months ago or something. Yeah. So for the audience, we live 50 miles apart, and
Yes,
it
yeah.
was my fault because I didn't tell you. I wasn't clear that this was online, and you drove all the way to Salt Lake City, and then I'm like, dude, no, it's online.
It was my fault. I should have listened and watched some of the podcasts, but I didn't
Yeah, I
want to
get
be
it.
like influenced by what somebody else says. I wanted to be authentic, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go up there. I thought Jeff had this whole setup that was awesome, and
No,
he's like, no, I'm not set up here to do any of that. I
no.
thought we were in the studio, so
No, well, I'm
yeah,
glad you're finally here, man. And I still need to come see your studio, but I was looking
right,
behind you and just
right.
admiring that. Oh, wait, it's this one here. Admiring all the stuff you got going on back there. Like you got the
Yeah, I got a bunch of
costumes.
bunch of projects over here, and then yeah, costumes and things for those projects, and yeah, this is my studio here,
Your
North
studio's
Light right here in front of
gorgeous.
me, and yeah, my
Yes.
easel's right here.
So I saw a
Yeah.
video on your Instagram too. Let me see if I can find that real quick. But maybe I'll just run. You did like a quick
Oh
tour.
yeah, like a tour. Yeah, for Portrait Society in one of their events, they had me do a studio tour where I just walk through and talk about studio and what I did. And this is a
Is
fairly
this it?
recent move
Is
here.
this it?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it. Walking through and through the front door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, this is so nice. I want to build a studio so bad.
Well, you've had plans to build a studio, right? Like to
Yeah,
kind of
but
add on to your current space. It's not like you don't have an amazing space up
no,
there.
I love my space. But there's something about building from the ground up like you did. It's like it's all your own. And
Yeah,
you got it
yeah,
just perfect. I mean, I'm assuming you're really happy with it. It looks
yeah.
incredible.
I'm happy
Man,
with
look
it.
at that.
Yeah,
So that last scene you had, it looked like you had tube
yeah.
lights between the windows.
Right, right. And they're on right now because it's pretty low light today, and it's just a way to kind of add a little bit more of that natural light in. And when I have a day like this where it's pretty cloudy and pretty dim, and lets me extend the day, so and work into the night a little bit.
Yeah,
But
that's
it's nice
smart.
because the light is coming from the windows, and so it's allowing that same effect of the natural light coming in.
Is
Yeah.
it like LEDs, like high CRI LED strips, or what is it?
Yes, yes, they are, and they're on a switch where I can dim them, and then I can also change the color temperature. So I can change, obviously cool or warm on the temperature of the lights, and so they're very fancy light that I put in. I wonder sometimes you kind of like over engineer it thinking you're going to use it in a really awesome way, and then you have it and you realize you only use like part of what it's capable of doing. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it's maybe too much that I put in, but they're awesome. They're awesome lights,
So what don't you
and yeah, they have a
use?
nice color rating.
So if I were to build something like it, what didn't you use?
What didn't I
What
use?
didn't you use?
Well,
So I could, you
the
know,
color temperature I use, and they also this is the type of light that I put in is fine light. It's FINELITE, and it's made for like classrooms and businesses to help your like students and stuff with their learning as far as like light relating to like how your mood or your kind of like a cooler light will calm you down during the day or I
right.
think it's the opposite. Warmer light calms you down, and then like a cooler light wakes you up or something like that. And so they actually have a daylight sensor on here that will like sense the light and then adjust. But I haven't even set
What?
that up.
They
Yeah, it's
do?
really cool. It's really cool, but I haven't set that part of it because I just haven't needed it. And it even has like an app where you can adjust it on your phone and stuff, and I've never used that too. So
Huh.
Yeah.
But in north,
It
but
was,
those are north windows, right? So isn't the temperature
those
pretty
are north.
consistent anyway?
Yeah, it's pretty consistent, but especially this time of year when it's 4 o'clock and it's dark, it's nice to have the lights and still have a similar light that's coming onto my canvas when I'm painting.
Right. No, I
Yeah.
mean the color temperature is
Oh,
pretty
color temperature.
consistent.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I've noticed even throughout the year, it adjusts a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit warmer in the summer, or colder in the winter, and so I adjust the temperature just a little bit.
Hmm.
I think ideally all you're trying to do in the studio setting is just keep your light consistent. So if you don't have natural light, you just want to have a light that's like you mentioned earlier, high CRI, so that you can really see your colors. But you want to keep that light in your studio consistent and always the
Right.
same. So
Right.
that's what I was trying to do with this, is just keep my light the same. Yeah.
Hmm. Man. And what's the square footage of it?
This is about 1,600 square feet,
Okay.
including with the upstairs, of course.
Yeah. And that's David Dibble just built a studio, right? Same size,
Yeah.
1600.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I've been in the studio. He's done a wonderful job with it.
Has
He's
he?
got this is an existing space, so this is concrete floor here, but he's got an easel where it goes into the floor, and I know a lot of artists have that. I've seen that Kwang Ho has one like that he designed and built, and so that you can kind of paint on the top of it. You've got an awesome setup with your easel, where similar idea where you can move it
Yeah.
around. And, yeah,
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I can't go into the ground. So he literally went into the
yeah.
ground. But then
Well, I mean, he had into the basement,
oh,
right?
he has a
Yeah.
basement.
So, so,
Okay.
so yeah, so he cut through the floor. Yeah, where I might have done something like that, but this was this was already here, and I just got it done. So the footprint was here, right? And we gutted it down to the four walls, and then used what I had from there.
Yeah. And I think Josh Clare did something like that too, where he has one that goes into the basement.
Yeah, yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so these are all Utah artists for listeners. And
right,
we're all
right,
keeping
right.
tabs on each other's studios. It's like
Yeah, we're
some people compete over their shoes. We compete over studios.
right. That's right. We do. We do. We're always bragging about our studios.
Yeah, we love our studios. So yeah, so it's I was thinking before we got on, I've known you for what, like, I don't know, has it been 20 years, 10 years, 15? What has it been?
It's probably been it's probably been 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've never actually sat down and actually gotten your story. I know bits and pieces. So
Yeah.
I'm excited
Yeah.
to kind of, get your whole background. So let's start with that. Tell me where you came from and how you
Okay.
decided to get into art.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Wyoming, and northern Wyoming, and I guess my story as an artist was that I guess I kind of always knew that I would get into art at some point, but I didn't really take it serious growing up. And I kind of my first experience with art, my mom likes to brag that that when I don't know, I was probably 2 or 3, I won a coloring contest for
Awesome.
coloring a green Santa Claus, and I think that kind of in my mind as a young kid saying told me that I was an artist,
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, it was my mom said that I painted a green or I colored in a green Santa Claus because my brothers were using all the red. So yeah, but then I was just thinking about that, and I was like, well, I was in a small town. I won this coloring contest, but how many kids? I mean, there's maybe 1,000 people in the town I grew up in,
Yeah.
maybe a little more. But how many kids were actually in this coloring contest? I probably won just because I was the only one that entered. But still, it's what kind of motivated me growing up. But I think mainly my two older brothers were into art in high school, and just with siblings, I looked up to my older brother, so I was always trying to like be like them and do what they did, and so they're now software engineers, so they're not even
Oh, no kidding.
at all. But growing up, I remember seeing, especially my older brother, like he was really good, and I was like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be as good as him, and I see that in my kids now. My youngest is just, I have 3 boys. My youngest just like everything that my middle child does, my youngest is wants to do, or is trying to be like. And so that was my motivation. But I didn't do any painting. I drew quite a bit growing up, but I didn't do any painting until I got to college. I think I did one painting in high school, and that was it. And then I got to college. I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and after I got home, I uh, I was thinking of leaving, coming to Utah, but I thought for whatever reason I should stay close nearby. And there was a community college there about 20 minutes away from where I grew up. I never, growing up there, I kind of wanted to get out, and I didn't want to be in that small rural area. So I never really thought that I was going to go to that school.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, I decided I'm just going to stick around. I'm going to go there. I'm going to study there. And so I took art classes there, and I met my professor, John Gerizzo, and he's the one that really inspired me to be a painter. Like he it wasn't really fundamentals that I learned from him. It was more of like just the excitement and the love of art. I mean, he loved everything about the Renaissance, and I knew a little bit about some of the history of art, not really, because I just didn't really take it that serious when I was in school. High school art was, maybe most people have a lot of experience, the same experience as me, was you just grabbed something from the National Geographic and you took it in the back room and you put it on the projector and you traced it, and then you colored it in. I didn't really have any type of training, but when I got to college, that's when I really my eyes were open to art. And at the time, this was in the mid '90s. I didn't really think that being a studio painter was a real viable career.
Did you
So
even know what it was?
I didn't know. I didn't know what it was. I thought I would go into commercial art. I thought at the time, commercial art, because computers and doing anything
Mm-hmm.
on that was still kind of in the beginning stage. And so I thought I would do something along those lines. And so I remember even taking some graphic design classes, and that was my plan, to do graphic design. But then I met this teacher, and actually this painting over here, or am I looking at the wrong? Right, I'm like backwards on
I know
this.
everything's backwards.
Right here we go. This
Okay.
painting right here is the portrait of my mentor that I'm talking about, John Gerizzo. He when I took his classes, it was just like he just kind of embodied the whole idea of the art spirit. That book by Robert Henry, like
Mm-hmm.
that was his manual for the course, was read this, and he kind of lives that spirit. And so it really excited me to be a painter, but I didn't really know how that would really work out for me, becoming a painter. I wanted to, but in the back of my mind, I kind of thought I would go into graphic design,
So did
which I
he
ended up
introduce you to the actual career of painter, or it just got you excited about art in general?
just art in general. I mean,
Okay.
in college classes, it wasn't anything like, okay, here's how you become the practical aspect of becoming a painter. It was all just like, we love art, and this is the first experience I had with like figure drawing and like life drawing, and anything like that. And it was awesome. And so that was really fun, just to try to become good at what I'm doing, to become a good draftsman. And it really wasn't anything about the business side, or how I'm going to make a career as an artist. It was really just, you know, the love of painting and the love of drawing. And
Dude, I got to cut you off before you take it any further because this is cracking me up. Our stories are
why is that?
so unbelievably similar. I didn't grow up in a
Our
small
stories?
our stories. I didn't grow up in a small
Wow.
town,
Yeah.
but other than that, I grew up in New York, as you know, but
Yeah.
I won a drawing contest and won Barnum Valley circus tickets for my family when I was 8. And then I never
When you were
really took
okay.
art, and it totally boosted my confidence, but I never took art again until college, and never painted until college, and had a similar experience where I had a teacher that got me excited about art, but I still didn't know what painting was or what a career in painting was. So I went into illustration. Like it's like exact same
It's
path.
like
It's
it's
a
like the
trip.
same, dude.
Yeah.
But you know, and we're similar ages, right?
Hmm.
And so in the mid '90s, I mean, the internet was just starting. So I didn't know anything about ateliers or
Yeah.
any type of optical study. I didn't know anything about that, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, in a sense that that I kind of found my own path. Because if I would have had those, I might have like that would have been exactly where I went. And I don't know if I would be on the same trajectory right now if I had. So I'm kind of lucky, I think,
Yeah.
that kind of turned out that way. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally. Did your parents support your going into art?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. They yeah, they're very supportive of it. But I look back and I don't know why they were really
Yeah,
supportive of
yeah,
it.
I
It's
know.
not like
Especially you're from a
big
small
expensive.
town. You would
Yeah,
think they'd
coming
be
from a
really
small
blue
town, I think
collar.
maybe they expected. I don't know. I don't know why, but my mom and my dad were always very excited about and very proud. My dad today is still always very proud about what I'm doing and excited to tell the neighbors or whoever will talk to him, you know, about what I'm doing. So
Well,
um,
now you're successful, but in the
yeah,
beginning, was he that way right from the beginning or
I think so. I think so.
really?
And no, they were never against it. They were never against it. They yeah.
Oh, there's where
Um,
our lives are different. My parents pushed me. They were freaked out that I was going into art.
really.
Oh yeah. Freaked out.
No, my parents seem to always just give us kids a lot of freedom when it
Hmm.
came to what we were doing, and not a lot of like, you know, you just go kind of find your own way, do whatever, you know, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Uh, the joke is though that that my parents are most proud of me, but my brothers are the ones that make the most money, you know. Um, so they're always yeah, they make way with doing software, you know, programmers that yeah, they make way more money.
Yeah. Yeah, but you got a great job. You got an
Oh,
awesome job.
oh yeah, I mean, I did the office job for um oh man, 10 years, 10 11 years, and I am so blessed and fortunate that I don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, so this is something I didn't know about you. Okay, so when
Yeah.
I first discovered you, it was at the Springville Museum, and I think you had a painting of Doubting Thomas. Does that
Oh,
ring a
yeah.
bell? It was, and I looked at it, and I had recently done a painting of Doubting Thomas, and I was looking at your painting and thinking, man, this guy's good. And
Was it Doubting Thomas or was it like a tar and feather scene or something like that? I had that in Springville a long time
it
ago.
wasn't Doubting Thomas. It might have been a tar and feather scene. I just remember, I thought it was
Because
Doubting Thomas. Have you
you had
not done
just
that
done.
painting?
No, I haven't done a Doubting Thomas
It
painting.
must have been the
I did
tar and
some
feather.
paintings kind of based on Caravaggio, like you know, because my professor or my first teacher was you know loves Caravaggio, and so I did some kind of
Oh,
Caravaggio
so
painting.
could it have been the tar and feather was based on Caravaggio?
Yeah, based
Oh,
on
that's
with
why I'm mixing
dark
it up.
background, lots of like you know lots and light and dark shapes. But I remember you had done a tar and feather scene fairly right at the same time,
No,
which was
see,
way
we're
back.
getting mixed up. I did the Doubting Thomas.
Yeah.
I never did a tar and feather scene.
Well, you did one where like Joseph is talking to the mob, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
they
think
have that.
it was similar.
Yeah. Anyway, I saw that painting and I was really curious about who you were at the time. And I'd heard that
Oh
you were
wow.
studying with Bill Whitaker.
Oh
And
wow.
so that was
Yeah.
my first exposure to you. But I don't want to jump ahead though. So
Oh, okay.
you were studying in your hometown at this college.
Right.
So what happens next?
Well, it's a 2 year college, so I thought the next step was let's go to BYU and study there. So I wasn't smart enough to get in on my grades, but yeah, I was kind of my application. I was like one of those where if somebody drops out, we'll let you in. I don't know what it's called, but
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of my how you know how my application went to BYU. But then I applied for a scholarship in the art department at BYU, and I got a scholarship, which automatically got me into the school.
Wow.
And so, so I came down here to Provo, and yeah, was came here to finish my degree, And I went into the studio program thinking at that point, like,
Oh
oh man,
no.
I just really want to be a studio painter.
Yeah.
And I want, but I love traditional painting because that's, that's realism. That's where I want to be. And so I went in the studio thinking that illustration wasn't going to be for me, and I was wrong. I was wrong
Hmm.
because they didn't want anything to do with realism, and I was doing these paintings where, again, I was telling you about like, and they were large paintings, like 3 by 4 feet paintings of Caravaggio, where I was like modernizing Caravaggio paintings of, instead of like Peter writing in a book, it was like typing on a computer or things like that with like the angels in the background. And I was proud of these paintings, and they just tore them apart. They didn't because for whatever reason they just weren't. They weren't. They were too realistic,
Yeah.
and so I did have a few professors that were really great there. Like Bruce Smith was awesome, but I didn't really feel like I didn't get that same excitement for art that I did for my, when I first started studying in college. And so I got discouraged, and I just got my degree and got out of there. I didn't go into the
Oh, you
bachelor.
never did do illustration.
No, no, I didn't. I took some illustration classes, but then I just didn't. I don't know, for whatever reason. I was
You
already
got a
kind of like
degree from the studio department? I had no idea.
studio department, yeah. And I didn't
Wow.
I didn't apply I didn't apply for the BFA. I just got my degree, and then at the same time, I around that same time when I graduated, I got married, and so I needed money and needed a job, and so I took a job as a graphic designer at a software company, and I did that for 10 years. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
You must have been
yeah.
painting
Which
too at the same time.
Yeah, but it wasn't very much. It
Yeah.
was just a little bit here and there. Um, um, but really, you were a huge inspiration for me, by the way,
Oh, that's nice of
because
you.
when I was doing that software job, it was probably maybe like 2005 ish. I think was the first time I saw your work, and I
Hmm.
came across it on a website, and saw that you were like doing it. You were like making it as a painter, and I was like, oh well, Jeff can do this. Maybe I can do this. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
Um, and it was really inspiring to me to see like your paintings and like how you were taking, and kind of modernizing this idea of realism with the way you treated the shadows and the colored glasses and that kind of
Hmm.
time on those type of paintings. It was really inspiring to me, and so I that kind of like got me excited. I don't know why that was. Maybe it's just because, yeah, we were the same age and
Yeah.
you were doing it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And that kind of inspired me to go after it and start painting again. So I think I had stopped painting altogether for like 3 or 4 years. Like I don't
I
think I
had
really
no
painted.
idea. Holy cow.
But then I took a workshop from Bill Whitaker, and that was huge because that was the first time I was really like um, I really learned like the craft of painting, right? I
Hmm.
really like Bill came from a time when everything was modernism, right? He wanted to do this classical realism, and he didn't have any resources to do it, so he had to figure it all out. And because he had to figure it all out, he knew how to teach it. And so I learned a lot from Bill, and then just in this one, it was like a 5 day workshop. I learned so much, and then I contacted him privately and asked him if I could study with him, and so I ended up studying with him for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, where I would just take one day a week. I would take one day off work each week and go up to his studio and work with him,
Hmm.
and that that was kind of my first step into getting into to becoming a full time painter.
No
So
kidding. And then didn't you study with him kind of long term?
that was about as long as I studied with him. Because my last studio in Pleasant Grove, Utah, well, I had just finished it, and when I finished the studio, that's when I was kind of stopped working with Bill as much. and it wasn't like formally with Bill. Bill and his students was more of like an apprenticeship. It was you come and work with him and and he answers all your questions. He really kind of helped me with just kind of the idea of becoming a full-time artist and really what it looked like to be a full-time painter and what all that entails. But in exchange, we as apprentices would then do work for him around the studio, mow the lawn, those kind of things, pick up things, so that was really beneficial and really helpful just to kind of see what his colors he's using on his palette and stuff because I didn't really know about any of that stuff, and it's just things that I had picked up along the way. And after Bill, it was really a huge learning curve. Of then I was just going out and reading all these books and learning about how to the craft of painting, right? How to
Reading
get
all
better
these
at it.
books. Yeah,
Yeah,
it cracks me up because that's just not how it's done anymore. Everything's online. But it's the
yeah,
same
everything's
thing. I
online.
lived in
Well,
Barnes
and
and
I guess
Noble.
it started getting more online as I was growing and developing, and then there's other artists here in Utah that have studied academically that I pick their brains and kind of grab some knowledge from them, and it's just this idea of community, which is really nice,
Hmm.
and learn so much from that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you should mention that. I recently interviewed Max Ginsberg, and I'm going to post his in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay.
But toward the end of the discussion, I don't remember if he brought it up or if I did, but he asked me why there are so many good artists in Utah. And I had a theory. I want to run this by you, but I also want to run
Okay.
by a theory that I was just with Governor Cox of Utah last night, the
Oh,
governor of
wow.
Utah. Yeah. And I asked him this question, and he has a different theory. I want to run both theories by you and see what your thoughts are, because you must have thought about this. Because for those who don't know, people literally come to Utah to scout for artists, and
Yeah.
which is mind blowing because there's only 3 million people in this entire state. And
Well, and it's interesting too because I don't think there's a lot of art support when it comes to collectors in Utah. I
no,
don't sell,
that's
I
the
don't know
other
about
weird thing
you, but
about it.
I don't sell any of my work in the state of Utah. I mean, maybe
I
some
can't say
commissions.
none, but not, yeah, not a
Well,
lot.
yeah, and I can't say none either, but a very very small amount of work that I actually sell,
Yeah,
and
I
so
know.
it's not like the collector base that's supporting it.
No.
Um,
Well, here's my
but
theory, and then here's Governor Cox's theory. I hope he doesn't mind that I share
okay,
it. So,
okay,
my theory is that back in the 70s, when all the rest of the country was really in deep into postmodernism,
yeah,
we had Alvin Gittins teaching at the University of Utah, who was an English artist that they
yes,
brought into the University of Utah. And we had Doug Snow, who was more of an abstract artist, but he had an academic foundation.
right,
But mostly Alvin Gittins, and he was a world-renowned portrait painter. His portraits are all over Salt Lake, as you know,
yes,
and
yes,
they're incredible. Anyway, he taught people like Bill Whitaker, Randall Lake. I think he taught Bonnie Pacelli. I'm not sure, but a few others that are really great painters. And then you and I are the next
yeah.
generation under those painters. And for me personally, even though I never studied with Bill or Randall, both of them influenced me. And I know at least Bill influenced you
Oh,
in a
absolutely.
sense
Yeah.
that even if they didn't teach us a ton, they gave us something to reach for and they were local and they inspired us.
Yeah.
At least they did
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So my feeling is, well, that's why there are so many, because when no one else had someone to look up to, we had this sort of little stew boiling here in Utah way back in the 70s that was building up generation after generation of realists. That's what I've always thought. But Governor Cox said something different, and I thought, man, there might be something to that. He
What
said,
did what did he say?
he said that, no, it was good. It's good. He said that Utah is unique. Well, first of all, Utah has one of the best actually the best economy in the country.
Yeah.
And it's like the best of, it's got like 50 different criteria. It's the best, he said. I mean, it is an incredible state. But
Yeah.
he equated all of the success in Utah and all these different fields, because it's not just art, to community. he said that what creates community here in Utah is the way Brigham Young set it up, where he said, okay, everyone's going to live in the cities and they're going to farm outside the cities. Everyone's going to meet in a congregation, because as everyone watching this knows, that Utah is a Mormon state, right? Meet in a congregation in their geographic area. So by default, he's creating community. The rest of the country, you go to the church where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
And then that's the way it's been for 150 years. But while the rest of the country community is falling apart because people are leaving their religions, people are bouncing around from place to place, and they're not going in their little geographic areas like we do here in Utah.
Yeah.
Communities are sort of broken and fragmented, whereas here they're still strong. And he says that it's that community that builds success. And he also said that there's actually been research on this, and Utah has a unique quality in that there's two mindsets in the world. There's the scarcity mindset, where if Casey Childs is successful, Jeff HEIN loses. And in Utah, we have the mindset in general. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions, and like I said, he said there's research on this, that in Utah, generally speaking, the attitude is if Casey's successful, Jeff is successful.
Yeah, Bill said a number of times. He said, "There's enough room for everybody. We don't need to be competing
Bill was
against
so generous. My gosh. Yeah. When he got the governor's award like 10 years ago, I was there, and he talked about my art on the pulpit. He was talking about how great of an artist I am. I'm like, I was kind of embarrassed, but also incredibly flattered. But that's the kind of guy he was. He was just like, what about the artists in the audience?
Yeah,
and he's getting the governor's award. Yeah. So I'm curious of what you think of those two theories.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. But I remember you saying a few years back that, and I remember you saying this to Bill because I was there, was that in over in Italy, the Renaissance started in Florence because of this one, the Medici's, and I really think, like, along the same lines that you said, is that Bill having this lineage and this inspiration from Alvin Gittins, then kind of carried that torch of just bringing in all these artists and really teaching this idea of representational painting and having it grow here in this area. And so he's kind of that idea of the Renaissance of realism here in this area. Was it kind of in a way like the way you're talking about it centers around Bill.
Yeah. What do you think about that community idea? Because that was new to me last night.
I think absolutely, because I feel like at any moment I can call up any of these artists around here and ask them questions. I mean, I just was on the phone the other day with David Dibble and talking to him about stuff I'm working on, because these latest paintings I'm doing, I'm incorporating a lot of landscape, which I'm normally, my wheelhouse has been interior lighting, studio, really kind of control lighting. And so now I'm trying to figure out the landscape to like include into these paintings, and it's a whole nother thing. And so talking with Dave and other artists in the area, and I can just, they're there for me to talk to, which I think anybody, because when I was talking to Dave, he was talking to Tim Lawson, and I'm like, oh wow, you're talking to T. Allen Lawson. That's pretty awesome. And but so many artists are really generous with their time, but I just feel like around here there's and we even get together and paint together and stuff, and it seems like there is that community. I think so, but I think it all started with Bill. I don't know how much that community was happening while Bill was still trying to figure everything out, and he was kind of growing up as an artist,
Yeah. Well, it's kind of wild, nonetheless.
But I think that idea of everything kind of geographically, I haven't really thought about that, but I think that is a really interesting idea that is this community around here and coming together, this idea of congregations. And
because it's not just art. That's the point he made. It's tech. It's all kinds of businesses just thrive here. All kinds of entrepreneurs thrive here. So he makes a valid point.
And it is an entrepreneur spirit that is around here that I have a lot of that in my own family, which was very inspiring to me to say I could do it on my own and make a business of what I want to do. You know, I have an
Yeah.
uncle who started a very successful software company, and so I think that in the back of my mind is an inspiration that, oh, hey, I can go do my own thing too. You know.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yeah, well, it's something to think about. I mean, I've thought about it plenty, as you know, because like you said, we
Right.
talked about it with Bill before he passed, which is
Yeah.
awful sad. That last night it was
Very,
interesting.
very sad.
Yeah, to think
Yeah.
about that again. But
Yeah.
okay, so you went
Okay.
to BYU, you had your
Yes.
job, and then you started
Yes.
studying with Bill. How did
Yeah.
you make that transition? Because you had a family and everything. How did you make that transition from?
Yeah, because I had two boys at the time I decided to be a full-time painter. People ask me that story all the time, and it's really interesting, and it's not one I recommended anybody to do. But I wanted to because I had a great job with great benefits. I wanted to keep the insurance, and so I wanted to keep studying with Bill with more times during the week. So I wanted to see if I could make this transition into being a full-time painter by working part-time at my job. And so I went to my boss and said, can I work part-time? And he said, well, let me think about it. And he comes back to me and says, we want to make you the art director, which
Oh
meant
no.
more time at work. And so I really felt like I was at this crossroads of what am I going to do? Should I stay this path or should I go this other direction? And it was really a hard decision, but in the end, I decided, and with the support of my wife, I should say. I mean, she was very, obviously apprehensive, but supportive at the same time, and we decided to do it. Luckily, we had a little bit of money that we could kind of be okay to just say okay. And I quit my job and I went for it
Oh,
full
so
time.
you didn't go part-time. You just quit altogether.
I told him I'm done, and I went
Oh
full time.
man. Good for you. This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
But it's funny because in the first year, maybe even 2 years, my wife was like, she would kind of gently say to me, like, if this doesn't work, you're going to go back to graphic design, right?
Yeah.
But nowadays she doesn't say that, and it was really interesting when I first started, because you kind of get known for what you do, and so all my work I felt like in my first year, not all of it, but a majority of it that I was doing graphic design for people because that's what they knew me as. But then the more I started, doing paintings and getting known as an artist, as a painter, then the work that came to me was for um, was for painting and not graphic design.
Oh, so when you quit, you just moved right into freelance graphic design without
Yeah,
asking for
not
it.
intentionally,
Not
not
intentionally.
intentionally. I was just
Okay.
kind of taking whatever work would come my way, right? But
Yeah.
the work coming at me was freelance graphic design.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's the
but
part I knew about you. I knew you did freelance graphic design at some point.
I did. Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was only just to keep going doing this as a painter, right? I
Right.
need to pay the bills.
And how long did it
Yeah.
take for that to sort of disappear, the graphic design jobs?
It took about probably 2 or 3 years for that
Okay.
to really just. Nobody asked me to do graphic design anymore, except maybe family.
Yeah.
You know, when
Yeah.
somebody needs something on a website or something.
So, and when was this about? When did the graphic design fizzle out? About what year was this?
I would say it was right. It was, man, timing in my career has been amazing, and it's what's kept me going. It's really awesome. I left in 2009 because I remember my youngest was 2 years old. So I left my graphic design job in 2009, and then about
After
2011,
the recession, or was that at the middle of the
that was
recession?
after the recession, right? It
Okay.
was right after the recession. So I don't know what I was thinking. I just kind of like, let's go for it. And being young and dumb, I did it. And and so about 2011 is, I think that's when it was. In Portrait Society, I won an award at Portrait Society
Mm-hmm.
for like a certificate of excellence. And it was about that time that I started kind of winning awards that the graphic design started going away. And so that really propelled me, because once I won some awards, then some galleries were interested in what I was doing, and I started sending them work. And I was really fortunate because then the economy was recovering at that time, and then I was selling work, and then and in the meantime I was doing portrait commissions, and whatever. I mainly went into portraits. I love to paint people. Just that's kind of always been my interest. But I think a lot of it, portrait commissions, I saw that Bill Whitaker was doing it, so I saw that as a way to make it as an artist. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the influence there.
So do you feel like the awards had a direct impact on your success?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I did a painting. Well, the funny thing is in 2009, the moment I decided to leave my graphic design job, I had this inspiration, this idea to paint this religious scene, and
Mm-hmm.
of this painting that's now hanging in the Church History Museum up in Salt Lake, of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith
Great
and
painting.
Hiram in Carthage jail, where you have the mob on one side of the wall, and them in the room.
Yeah.
And I had this idea to paint this painting, and I went for it. I mean, the moment that summer I went out to Carthage in Illinois, and researched the painting. There it is, right there, and researched this painting. This is a big painting. It's especially at that time, right? It's 9 feet wide, 5 feet tall. Not as big as your paintings, Jeff, but
it's
it's still big.
it's still
Still big.
big. Yeah.
And I just had this, and I had this inspiration to paint this, and I really don't know why, because it was monumental painting. Who's going to buy a huge painting from somebody that nobody knows of? But I really felt like I needed to paint this, and I remember thinking when I was working on it, I thought, who wants this painting? It's a photo of some people being shot and killed, not a
Mm-hmm.
photo, but a painting of people being shot and killed, and who wants this painting? But I really felt like I needed to do it. And so I painted the right side of that painting, the people inside the room, and I put it in a show, and a local show here in Springville. It
The
was in
salon.
the Spring Salon, or I think it was a religious show, but still,
Okay.
it won the place award,
Which
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 then
place? You cut out for a sec.
it won the first place award,
It did just
and
half of it.
did just half of it, because I had
Wow.
half of it finished, and it won. And then there was another show that was happening up in Salt Lake right after this, and I put it in that show, and it was the LDS art competition, and it
Mm-hmm.
won like People's Choice, and then the curator at the time, Rita Wright, came to me and said, we want to purchase this painting. And I said, great, because I intended to be a diptych. I want to paint the other half. And so they commissioned me to finish the painting, which then gave me that boost of money and momentum to kind of keep going. And then once I finished this painting, I ended up a few years later, doing a portrait of Elder Jeffrey R. Holland. And they told me, they said he looked at this painting here and said, I think there it is right there. He said, well, if he can paint that painting, he can paint me. So that gave me, it just kind of that kind of snowballing effect that happened, that just and again, for whatever reason, I decided to paint that painting. I just felt really strongly about it. And
Mm.
going back to that martyrdom painting, I think it was just this idea of the strong design, and going back to my graphic design, kind of spending all those years doing that. I just like the idea of these big diagonals going against each other. Yeah, that's it. And so the strong diagonals, what I was thinking, the diagonal of the men pushing against the room, and the other diagonal of the mob coming. But then it really turned into this whole. If you go back on the website and go back to that page, there's a whole section. Sorry, go to the historical religious again. And right there it says creating greater love hath no man, right at the very top. And
Mm-hmm.
those words right above it, go above, go up a little
Oh,
higher,
right
up.
here. Yeah.
Um, so scroll down. So it really turned into this whole thing where I was really like trying to make it as accurate as I possibly could and trying to really make this painting to the point where I built walls in my studio. I built
I
a
know. I
set.
remember this, dude. I was thinking this
Yes, where I
guy's
could stage. I
hardcore.
really wanted this feeling of like them being in that room. What did it look like if they were all crowded together?
Look at you.
And I
You're a
wanted to capture
baby.
that into painting. What's that?
Look at you, man. You're a baby.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Nice black beard there.
Yeah, right. No longer. Yeah, it's all gray now. Um, but uh, but I think by putting all that effort into just really making it authentic has really made that painting what it is and really propelled me into kind of where I am now, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah, that's
intense.
intense. Yeah, I remember following you when you were doing this and thinking, yeah, this guy's
Yeah.
doing it right. You're doing it. I mean, because you're right. How else would you create that feeling of weight without really just
Yeah, and I
building the
look
set?
back at this and I like, well, could I have done this? Could I have used 3D now today? Could I have, because my oldest son is like a computer genius and he wants to get into like uh kind of like movie kind of effects and those kind of things when it comes to 3D. So he could have built me this whole set, but I don't know if I would have been able to get the same effect. 'Cause I actually had the mob kind of the men that I dressed up in costumes and everything run up the stairs and push on that door and as I was shooting it, getting my reference.
Yeah, there's sort of
And I
a
think
randomness about real life because if it's 3D,
yeah,
you're forced to
yeah,
direct every last movement and you don't
right.
have an opportunity to let real people do what real people do, just the subtle
Right.
mannerisms, just the things you don't
Yes.
expect.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
So it was that painting I felt like really gave me a boost. And then I was selling in galleries and that was really helpful. And then I started, winning some more awards, won some more awards with Portrait Society, which then kind of, gives you a little bit of name recognition and
Yeah.
yeah.
Then the
And here
reason
we
I
are.
asked that is because I didn't start even applying to art contests until I was 15 years into my career. Because
So how did you make it then? I mean, I know you had a school pretty early on, right? Where you were teaching.
yeah, no, well, I mean, I just taught. I've had my school, I'm going to put quotes here. I
Yeah.
say since 2002, but it's
Okay.
evolved dramatically. It didn't look like this in
Yeah.
2002, but that's how every business is. It started out just a class in my studio twice a week. That's how it
Oh, okay.
started. And then it
Okay.
evolved into the HEIN Atelier as it is today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always taught, but the teaching is always just paid for the studio.
So has it
So
been mainly like portrait like you were just selling all your work privately then?
I got really lucky, and I had again, this isn't about me, but I'll just briefly say, I had a scholarship from a really generous man named Howard Clark who came to the University of Utah. I was a senior
Uh,
at the time, and he
okay.
picked two students that he thought had potential and he gave us both $1,500, which for me at the time was a lot of money,
Yeah,
and
that's like
said,
huge.
yeah, it was enough to buy
Yeah.
materials to paint for a year. And then at the end
Yeah.
of the year, he would pay for and arrange a two-person show. It was usually just
Oh
a
wow.
one-man show or one-person show, but this year he wanted two of us because this guy was a really good landscape painter, and obviously I did the figurative stuff. And then he lined up this show at the end of the year. I still hadn't graduated because my credits were off, and it was
Okay.
with Williams Fine Art, and my career just took off from that day of the show. Just
That's
and
when I first saw your work was Williams
was
Fine
it?
Art.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
more work than I can handle from that day on. I never graduated because I never had time to go back to school.
Oh really?
But the
Really?
reason I ask you about the awards is because I always tell my students to go for these contests, go for awards, but it's not my own experience because when I started receiving awards from doing contests, I didn't see any uptick in business at all.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure if that was due to, but I didn't need an uptick in business. Things are fine.
Right.
But I wasn't sure if that was due to the fact that I already had an established career. And so the people that might have seen me were already familiar, or
Yeah.
if it was because awards have no effect. So that's why I asked the question. It sounds like they
Yeah.
do have effect.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I could see it directly either, but I do think they have an effect. But I also, as an artist, I don't think that you can take them too, what's the word? Maybe too seriously, in a sense that you can't let a competition make or break you, because yeah,
Emotionally,
I
you
was
mean?
in competitions, but I'm still working. I'm still producing, and I think that's the main thing, is you got to keep going and keep working, and 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 I think it's your body of work that's really going to prove your success or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Right, right. Because I just think sometimes the competitions, like, sometimes people can get discouraged competitions, but also, if you're entering competitions, even if you don't win, you're still being seen by and being noticed by those people looking at your work, right?
Yeah, that's the key because you and I both know that these competitions can one year in fact, we've heard this story. I can't remember.
Yes.
Michael Shane Neal said this about someone else. If you remember who it was, tell me. I can't remember. But
I
about how
remember the story. I know what you're talking about.
this
Yeah.
artist submitted a painting one year, it got completely rejected, and then 3 years
Yes.
later he submitted the same painting to the same contest, and it won the
Yeah.
grand prize.
Right.
And
Right.
so
I don't
yeah,
remember the
the
artist.
point of the
Yeah.
story is you can't take these things too seriously, as you put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what they do for you, it appears, is they just get your name out there. So if you win a
Right.
contest, it doesn't mean you're the bee's knees, and if you lose, it doesn't mean you suck. But if you
Right.
win, it does put you in a magazine. It does get publicity, so it's a business bonus, you might
Yeah,
say.
because
Yeah.
because yeah, if somebody sees your name printed, it gives you this kind of validity, that
Right.
all of a sudden, that makes you look like you're some kind of great artist, right? I
Right.
still don't think I'm a great artist. I feel completely honored that you want to talk to me. I kind of feel like I'm like one of the little kids going, eating at the grown-ups
No
table,
way,
here.
man. You're amazing.
But I don't see myself as somehow made it. But at the same time, I think that name recognition of just seeing it multiple times gives you this idea of, now, oh, this guy is worth whatever I'm, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Do you know how many artists I contact that say to me things like, I just don't feel like I can really talk about my art as though I'm a real artist, or from the perspective of an actual artist, or I don't see myself as an artist, or I don't know if I really can take myself seriously enough on the podcast. And these
Yeah.
people are amazing. It just happened this week.
Right.
I'm not going to embarrass this person until I say who it is, even though it's a
Yeah.
credit to their character. But I'm like,
Humility.
I said to her, if artists stunk, you'd smell so bad, my eyes were watering. And she was flattered by that strange compliment, but it's true. She's so good. And she's like, I don't
Right.
know. I don't see myself as a very good artist. I don't know if I really would feel good on a podcast. Like, it's
Yeah.
amazing how it takes so long for us to see ourselves that way.
Yeah, it is. But I think we always need that self-doubt a little bit, because that's what pushes us to get better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The moment, like, you think that I'm great and that I'm awesome, you plateaued and you're not going to get any better. I
Right.
think you need that humility to push yourself. And it's that quote that I think has been attributed to Degas. Was it Degas? I don't know who it was, but that idea of, like, the oh, now I'm trying to remember the quote, but it's something like along the ideas that the better I get, the less I know, kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, and so it's just that idea that as you're growing and developing, you realize that at one point, early on, you thought, oh, I know everything about painting and this is it. And then as you're doing it, you realize there's so much more growth there. And I think that's where people get kind of not discouraged or anything, but sure definitely get humbled a little bit. Painting humbles you
Yeah.
every time because a funny story. I was doing the portfolio critiques at Portrait Society, and I had one artist come and talk to me, and I won't say her name because I don't know if it'll embarrass her, but she was showing me these works, and they're all just like amazing, like little portraits and still lifes. And as you know, as the expert there, I'm supposed to say something about her work, to give her like advice, and I looked at him and I said to her, I said, "These are amazing. What do you want me to say about these? Like, because these are
Really?
better than I could do." And she was
Wow.
like, well, she's like, the only question I have is, she's like, every time I start a painting, it just feels like it's so hard to do it.
Oh
And
my
and I was
gosh.
like, and I was like, well, that's never gonna go away. Every time I step in front of the easel, it's always hard. Like it's never a point where like, oh, this is easy. And when it does feel easy, it's usually you're probably screwing it up.
Yeah. My daughter is studying with me. She's 20 now. Have you met Addie? My daughter, Addie?
I met her. I think, yeah, I think I've
Oh, the
met her once
Porch
or
Society.
twice.
You probably
Yeah,
met her. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
Portia. Yeah.
So she's studying with me now, and she's been venting to me because even though she's studying with me, she's going to an institute class up at the University of Utah just to have a social life. So she's meeting
All
all these
right.
kids that are
That's
actually going
smart.
to the university, and they all
Yeah.
tease her. I mean, it's in love, I think, but there's always a little
Yeah.
truth to this teasing. She's got
Sure.
friends who are going to medical school and various other things, and they're all teasing her that, man, it must be nice to have such an easy education.
Yeah.
And it's like they
Yeah.
imagine her here just doodling and having fun all day long.
Yeah.
And I'd say, and one of her classmates here at the studio also attends with her.
Yeah.
And according to Addie, I wasn't there. She said she got all defensive and said, "Well, my teacher, me, told us a story, which is true, that he had a retired surgeon take the curriculum, and he said it was harder than medical school. So there." But it drives my daughter crazy because people just assume that if you're good at art or if you have artistic talent, it's just like playing all day long. Like it's
They
not
think
just
it's
the
easy.
artists that feel that way. It's the general public.
Yeah. No, my brothers tease me all the time that I'm just in here playing all day long, and
It's
I'm never
so
actually
hard.
working.
It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
hard.
My siblings love to tease me about this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
as you know, I do lots of other things, right? And I'm assuming you do things too because you did a lot to your studio. But
Yeah.
it's like the leather work, the metal work, the building my
Oh yeah.
van, everything else was so easy compared to
Yeah.
painting. And I've been painting for 20 years.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're like a Renaissance man. You can do way more than me, but I find myself looking for those jobs around the house to do because it's just that just seems like there's an easy outcome. I know what that's going to look like when it's done. It's
Yeah,
so hard with painting.
it's
It's
so
you just
hard. It
don't.
never gets easy. I don't know what it is. Yeah. And have you ever had that experience where you watch yourself? Because I know you've done a lot of demo videos where you
Yeah.
watch yourself painting in a demo video and it's kind of surreal because you're like, whoa, it looks easy. But
Yes.
then you remember
Yeah.
how painful it was to paint it. And
Yeah.
it's this weird, surreal experience where you're outside of your body and experiencing what other people might experience watching you. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, that's not how it was. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't easy. It looks easy, but it wasn't. It was hard to
No,
do.
absolutely. I don't know about you, but I'll look at those videos like that and think the same thing but I'll remember and it happens most of the time when I'm doing these sketches or these little portrait studies is that I don't like them the moment I finish them. But when I
Hmm.
step away from them for like a week and I haven't seen it, I look back at it, I was like, oh, actually, that's pretty good. But I'm always like so on myself, and so I think
Hmm.
that's part of it is that I want it to be better as I'm doing it, but then when I step back and look at it, I realize like, why was I so hard on myself? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I've had that experience too. Although there are some times where, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. I mean, I think most of us do. But there's some paintings that never look good. They could be,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it could be 20
Yeah.
years. I'm just like, nope, it still sucks. That
Yeah.
one's getting burned.
That's true. That's true. But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so let's see. So I think we've pretty much covered your life. I mean, now you're a full-time
Right.
painter. You've been a full-time painter since 2006,
2009.
2009. Okay,
Yeah.
so
So
tell me a
on
little bit
about
about how your
15.
business works. Like, what do you spend your days doing? What does a week look like in your studio
What does
or
a
in your
week look
life?
like for me? Well, it's pretty boring. I mean, I usually get in the studio about 9 o'clock, and I'll 9 a.m. and I'll take a break for lunch. Very quick, and then I'm back in the studio till about uh, about till when it gets dark. But usually about dinner time, and then I'll come inside. I'm lucky that my studio is right here in my house, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't have much of a commute, and so but as far as like I find myself taking lots of breaks when I tell people that I'm in the studio from like 9 to 5, but I'm not really like painting all day long because you just can't, when you're painting.
Mm-hmm. It's exhausting.
It just takes so much brain power to do it. It's exhausting that I find myself walking away, and it's kind of nice to have like paintings I've got to pack up or something I got to photograph or things I got to email or update on the website or something like that. It's nice to have like little distractions to walk away from the um, from the easel. But
Mm-hmm.
usually, and that the painting isn't the most time when it comes to creating a work of art. It's getting together all your reference and kind of getting everything ready to then paint the painting. I'm working on this project where I've got, oh, is it over? It's right here where I've
Yeah, that
got all
looks
these,
interesting.
all these are kind of Book of Mormon scenes that I'm doing for the Friend magazine, and so there's a lot going into composing those, and so there's a lot of time spent in Photoshop and trying to get the reference down before I even start painting. So
So what are we
it's not
looking
it's
at? Are we
not
looking at paintings back there?
those are paintings, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, those are paintings. This one, that black and white one, is I can't really move my finger,
Yeah, it's
kind of.
sort of sepia, you mean?
Yeah. That's the underpainting for it was going to be a painting for a temple, but I think it's now going to go in the Church History Museum. Long story about that, but that was the underpainting for it, and then it's going to um, yeah. So I haven't finished the color on that, and then the other ones back there are paintings I'm doing that is for a project. There's going to be 12 of them, one for each month next year. So.
Wait,
Um,
one,
and those are
you're
keeping
going
me
to
busy.
do one per month? Is that what you're saying?
They are going to be released in the magazine each month next year, and so
Oh,
I've
okay.
finished. Those are two of them. I've finished three others. I have another one on the easel, so I have. So
Wow, you got to
they're
get
going to, yeah.
cracking, man.
It's impossible like timeline to try to keep as it is, yeah, and it's a lot of work, and I'm trying to do them really well. I'm trying to make them great paintings, and and it's hard when you don't have when you have such tight deadlines. It's really difficult.
So when you're doing something for a magazine, I think I know the answer to this because
Okay.
obviously my association to the LDS Church, but do
Yeah.
you get to keep the rights to that painting when it goes to a magazine? And do you get to sell that painting
Yeah.
privately?
Yes, that was part of the reason why I really like the idea of this, because working with the church and some of the projects where they want to buy the copyright, kind of hold on to the use of it. This one is not that way. As the artist, I get the full rights and I can sell the original. They're just buying image use,
So you get
and
paid
so
twice or
I get
infinitely.
paid twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm selling these originals as well, which is great. And I like the idea of then I can print these, and um, so I think it just works out really well. And plus, there's some great LDS artists that, Minerva Tiger, Arnold Freeberg, they kind of done these kind of similar kind of scenes. And, not that I wanted to like think that I compare to them, but I like that challenge of like
Mm-hmm.
maybe, doing something along the same kind of size and scope.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like we're at this point right now in this resurgence of realism that's happening, is that there's just a lot of like studies, and I want to do more significant work, and this feels like an opportunity to do that, right? Where you're just telling this narrative. I think back in the 19th century, that was the epitome, right, of art, was the multi-figure narrative, and I'm really finding what my limitations are as an artist by taking on this project, and it's humbling because thought I was better than what I was, and now that I'm working on these things, I realize I have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
But it's helping me be better,
Yeah.
So
I constantly feel that way. Multi-figure kicks my butt every time. And I
it's so hard.
I look at the 19th
It's
century
just so hard.
painters and think, how were they so good?
Yeah, well, I think we have to think about it in time, because a lot of those paintings they took years to do.
Yeah.
But I'm looking now at the Golden Age illustrators and thinking they did some amazing multi-figure work in very short periods of time, and so I'm really studying like their processes and how they did it, because I just we know as an artist what we produce and what we sell is where our living is. So the faster we can do that, the better the income.
Right.
So I
So what have you
really,
discovered? What kinds of things have helped you to speed up?
um, well, taking the time, because I found trying to skip steps actually costs more time. And
Mm-hmm.
so really starting in the beginning, and like Rockwell's process was, he would start, of course, with his photo shoot and his idea, but then he would go straight to a full charcoal. Well, he'd do the color study, I think either before or after, but he would do a full charcoal sketch, and he'd really lay everything out in charcoal sketch, and then he'd do a full underpainting after the color study, and then he'd do his final painting. But he could knock these things out in 4 or 5 days, which had more than one figure in it. But I found him in working. I think, oh well, I don't need to do that. I don't need the color study, and then I find myself just
Mm.
stumbling and slowing down because I haven't solved it. So what I found is trying to solve everything um, digitally first. When I say digitally, like in Photoshop,
So
really
your
trying to
color
get my rough.
study is digital.
Both. I'll get on the computer and really work on it digitally, but I've found, and that's part of my conversations with Dave Dibble. He was saying the same thing, is that something that will work on the computer doesn't necessarily work in pigment, and so you have to work it out in the color study in paint as well.
Is that right?
So
Okay.
I've been really focusing on the color studies, making sure that those are good, and then I go to the painting, and yeah, I think that's really helped my process of speeding things up. But I'm still in this stage of trying to figure it out.
Man,
Um,
that's a good tip. You know I'm using
so
photography now, right?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I didn't know that it doesn't necessarily work in pigment if it works in
Works
Photoshop.
on the computer.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
gotta
well, you got
call
to think
David
it's
and
two
ask him
different
about
light
that.
sources, right? You've got the, I don't know, analog and whatever. You've got the where the screen is the
It's
white is coming
backlit.
from the screen, where the pigment, the white is coming onto the pigment, so it's different, right? And so
Hmm.
it's a lot of times what works, especially that you can get a wider range of value on the screen than you can in pigment. It's a lot more compressed, and so sometimes you got to work that out in pigment to get that same effect that you're looking for from the
And
from
you
the.
really can see a difference when you do one in pigment versus doing one just digitally.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
There's
man,
there's a
I gotta.
difference, because sometimes, especially, well, what I've noticed is landscape stuff, right? Because you can get that landscape effect in digital, but you can't quite get the same. Is even when you're going out and painting from the landscape, there's this wide range of value that you've got to compress into pigment, and you've got to figure out how to do that. And
I think
that's
I know
challenging.
what was happening with my crucifixion painting then, because maybe not, but the landscape on the crucifixion, I mean, you saw it. It was this gray, cloudy thing,
Right, right.
and it looked really good in the reference for the sky.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I ended up not being able to copy the reference. I had to change a lot of stuff because it wasn't working in the painting. And I just
yeah.
thought, and it still might be the case, I thought it was a scale issue, but it might have been a pigment issue.
I think it's a pigment issue. I think it's the fact that you know you just can't capture some of those effects.
Hmm.
You can get a feeling of it, but you have to do it in a way that works in the pigment. Yeah, you can get a similar feeling.
Man, learn something every day. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Awesome. All right, so let's start looking at your work.
Okay.
I mean, we've already obviously got a taste of it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
what it looks like now you're mostly focused on multi-figure, is that right?
yeah. That's kind of been the latest chapter in my work.
Now I'm just
I
going to
had
go
a
through a couple of these multi-figures
Oh, the
that,
historical ones.
yeah,
Yeah,
that are
yeah.
really
So this one
impressive.
was a was a painting that I did for the church, and it's on location. This is the story is in France, and it's John Taylor, one of the early leaders of the Mormon Church, with missionaries going to France, and this is where he was dedicating. France for the gospel, and so they went to the beach in Boulogne-sur-Mer, which is in the northern part of France, and which is kind of funny because what's that famous beach that all the artists painted?
I have
It's
no
just like
idea.
it's just south of that where they have those rock structures that are just really gorgeous.
Yeah, I have no
I'm
clue.
losing the
I don't even know
name.
if I've even heard of it. I'm out of the
Anyways, that was
loop.
like a beautiful beach. This is like probably the most ugly beach in the entire area there. And but this is where it happened. So I was actually had the opportunity to go there and take photographs on that beach, and then I staged my models here in Utah. But that's you know it got me an idea of the landscape of what it looked like.
Yeah, but
And so
it's old, it's newer now. So how did you modify the houses and the
I
buildings?
modified it, yeah, and I used and that was where Whitaker helped me. I used Google SketchUp and made
Mm-hmm.
those little wagons. But they historically, which is interesting, this was a tourist beach, and so they would use these what they called bath wagons, and they would take them, they roll them out into the ocean, and they would change out of their normal clothes into their swimsuits, and out the back they would go swim in the ocean, and then they would go back into the wagon and change into their regular clothes and go back out on the beach.
Oh,
And
no
so
way.
these were like changing wagons that they had. They would, and so I built those in Google SketchUp in 3D to kind of get the idea, the perspective, and stuff. And then that's how I put that
Can
in
you
there.
light them in Google SketchUp or just the
Yeah,
perspective?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
You
they
can? I
were,
didn't
yeah.
know
So I
that.
was able to put a light source on them.
I didn't know that.
But you know, this was painted it back in 2018, 2019. Now I would probably just have my son use a 3D program and help me
No
the whole
kidding.
landscape. Yeah. But then
So is
I
this Gregory Mortensen right here? It sure looks like him.
no, no, but it does look like Greg. It does look like Greg.
It does, yeah.
No, that was a neighbor of mine. And then
Okay.
right next to him is my little brother. He was in the
Right
on
here.
the right there. That's my little brother.
Yeah,
And
that's a great painting.
well, thank you. Those are just friends and neighbors that I was able to get to model for me for that.
And what do you do about costumes?
I was, you know, since this is a project for the church, they have a whole motion picture studio costume department that
Oh,
allowed me
nice.
to borrow the costumes and get those.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
know that.
but I was really proud of myself because I invented and made up all of the footprints on the sand. That was probably my favorite part.
Oh, no
Is
way. That's convincing. You know, it's really
yeah, yeah.
convincing
I
because I
made
was
all
going to
that up
ask you
because
if you took them to like Great Salt Lake or something in order to get that look.
I no, I didn't. I did try to take him to Utah Lake, and that's where I shot all of the reference, but the sand wasn't the same. It was just more of like hard packed dirt, and so there was no footprints. Um, but I noticed when I was there in France, there were a bunch of footprints, and so I was trying to make that up, and I was trying to give it kind of a narrative of like if you look right above the guy dealing John Taylor there above him, you can see a set of footprints, and then it kind of makes a hard turn back to Yeah, there you go. And then back to the right. So so it kind of looks like they walked down, because it said in what I read in the history of this is that they separated themselves from the general population or general public. And I was like, well, what does that mean? So I felt like maybe they walked down by these um, those bath wagons and then walked up the line of the beach until they came to this point and then stopped and gave this prayer right here.
That's a
So
nice
it's just a
touch.
way for
That's
me
a
to
nice
kind of
touch.
throw in a little bit of narrative.
Just
Yeah.
imagining him positioning himself right here. It's sort of
Yeah,
insignificant, but it adds to it.
yeah, yeah. And then as far as the lighting goes, this is where I was again using Dave Dibble to help me. He's such a great landscape painter.
Hmm.
He really helped me kind of figure out the coloring of the light and those kind of things. And
And what did you learn
really,
from him? Can you give us some
well, you know what?
tips?
I shot a lot of this in kind of more of an overcast light, and so he was helping me kind of figure out what the shadows would be doing, and then kind of the coloring. I mean, you notice the sky where it's kind of warmer at the bottom, and then it, of course, goes a little,
Yeah.
greener blue towards the top. Those kind of things where you're kind of learning what the landscape does. I mean, it's obvious when you look at it, but you kind of have to own that information a little bit, to kind of understand what's happening so that you can put it into the painting.
So you completely changed it from overcast to direct?
Yes, in some ways. Yes. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah, I
gosh,
did.
that seems really
Because
complex.
it didn't have like there maybe some of that light on their faces was similar to that, but I didn't have those like strong cast of shadows that are kind of going out and to the right. I didn't
But
have
did you at
that.
least
So
have the directional light? I mean, was the
I did
light
have the
dark pattern the
directional light.
same?
Yeah.
Okay, but it was
Yes.
just dimmer, so it didn't cast long shadows.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is that when I was in France, it was all overcast. So I made up the background to look
Oh,
like.
gotcha, gotcha. I'm looking at the
Yeah.
figures. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. No, figures was pretty correct to my
Okay,
reference.
okay.
I didn't have to make that up. It was the background that had to be invented
It looks
in that.
good. I never would have guessed.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, nice painting. All right,
Yeah.
and then I wanted to ask you about this one. This still available?
Oh, yeah. So this was a study. This was interesting. I told you that whole story about that
Yeah.
Carthage meeting is that they wanted me to finish the second half. So I came back to him with the study and said, "Hey, this is what I want the second half to look like."
They said no.
And they said no, we don't like it. And I was kind of a bit offended, being a young artist, probably a little bit of an ego. It's just like, what do you know? I know how to paint, and or I know what I'm doing. But I realized that yeah, this guy is too distracting. I really loved his pose and kind of how he's holding the gun and everything, but you couldn't look past him. And so when you look at the final painting, you notice what I did with the figure in the foreground is you don't even see his face, and what I like about it is the fact that he's covering his ear, because if you've ever heard a black
Oh
powder
yeah.
rifle go off, it's so loud,
Or
and
any gun
and
for that matter.
and so you look
Yeah.
past him because he's ducking, he's down, and you don't see his face, and it was a good change. So it was one of
Oh,
those
I hate
where,
it when they're right.
yeah, yeah, they were right. They were right.
I hate
Yes,
it. Oh
yeah,
man.
but it made the painting better.
So this
So
is
they
the
wanted me to
sketch
like,
of the right
yeah,
version.
in our discussion, they're like, well, show us one with where we take out the guy, and I think, do I have that in there or not? Is that another one
Um,
in there where he's not even there? Oh yeah, go to the one on the top right. Yeah.
oh no, that doesn't
So
work.
he's not even there. They are like, let's see one where he's not there. I was like, well, that's too open. It doesn't look crowded enough. Doesn't look like, because if you've been in that jail, it's a tight,
Yeah,
narrow
why would they be
hall.
hanging out here and leave all this space?
Yeah, and so it just, I think that's glare from the glass on that, but
Yeah.
some of those lines. But then yeah, you see how I changed it, and that's when we went with it. So I did a few charcoal drawings after I did that first color study to then kind of land on this.
Yeah, this is better.
Yeah,
I
it's
hate to
better.
admit it. Dang it.
It's better. Yeah, it tells the narrative. I put a bayonet on the end of that one um, gun there because, again, the witness. I was basing it off of the two witness stories that they have, the two survivors of it, and
Mm.
so and they talked about bayonets. I tried to get all of there's so much to talk about in this painting because there's so many things and so much to that narrative that
Yeah.
was really fun to put in.
And it's incredible that it was your first
Yes,
big sale and it's in a museum. I mean, that's a
yes,
that's a big
yes.
deal. I see this painting
And
fairly regularly because of that.
yes, it was the first thing I did. And then when I finished it, it was because Rita had then left to be the director of Springville Museum. And there was Laura was the new curator, and she came and we discussed it when it was done. And she's like, this is like your what's that French word where it's the pinnacle of your work?
What,
This is
magnum
your
opus or something, or
yes, yeah, this
yeah.
is your thing. And I was like, well, I hope not. I hope this isn't the thing that I peaked. And now I'm on my way down. I hope that's not it.
No,
But
definitely not. But it is
but
quite impressive.
well, thank you. It is definitely something that really is, and it really started with something that I just wanted to do. So I had a young artist, and hopefully it was good advice that just asked me the other day. She's like, what should I do? Like, I'm fresh out of school, and what should I do to get really kind of known? And I said to her, I said, find something that you really feel strongly about and paint it big, and
Hmm.
make it be like something really like epic, and whatever that is. And even if you fail at it, you'll learn so much from it. And luckily, I didn't fail at this one, but I did learn a ton from it, and it's helped me throughout my, just kind of help keep my career going.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, and then this is a
Would
recent one.
you give that advice to one of your students? Say, paint something like just epic and
I
big.
wouldn't have until today, but when you were saying it, I thought that's really good advice.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah, because
I think
I
that's
wondered
great.
after I said that to her, I was wondering like, was that smart of me to say that? That I don't know. But
I
it
hadn't
works
thought
for
about
me
it. I think it's good
because
advice
I think
though.
if you're just throwing out a bunch of little studies and little portrait studies and things like that, I don't think that really gets you known and seen, and
I
it
don't
doesn't
know.
help you grow as an artist.
There
I
is
think
a,
you need to do
don't you feel like
more than
though,
that.
you've kind of touched on this. You said you don't want your career to be just a bunch of little studies, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of careers that are a bunch of little studies, and there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong
you're
with
right.
that.
You're right. Yeah,
But
and I'm not poo pooing on that or
no,
saying
I know
that's
you're not.
terrible.
But my
Yeah,
point is, there's more than one way to do it.
yeah,
But I'm with you. As you know, I love the idea of doing grand paintings too. So I
yes,
think that's great
yes,
advice. And for
right,
nothing, if for nothing else, what you learn from it, because like you said before,
yes, yeah,
multi-figure painting, or maybe you didn't say this, and maybe I was just thinking this, but there's
okay.
nothing harder than multi-figure painting. It's to
I lost
me,
you here for a second.
to me, painting a portrait is like setting a broken arm, and multi-figure painting
Okay.
is like brain surgery. I mean, it's like,
It really is.
and
But there is, I mean, I'm always trying to get like the feeling and that kind of like spontaneity and kind of looseness in my finished work, which I don't think I've got there yet, but because I love that. So there's something about the quality of a sketch that's really nice. And
no,
so you can't
it
just piece it
is,
together.
it is, but it's so much, it's so complex, multi-figure
Yes.
paintings. So
Well, and this one here that we're looking at is very complex too, and I learned a lot about that in trying to I wanted to make this tonal painting of really, this moment like Christ, gives up the ghost and says it is finished. And you have Mary at his feet, kind of noticing that he's gone or he's about to go, and really wanted this kind of dynamic, um, strong designed image, and and I learned a lot from this. And there are a lot of things that now that I know a little bit more about the landscape, I would probably do different. But it's all learning process, right?
yeah,
We're all growing.
you know what I love about this painting is the lighting right here.
Oh,
How
thank you.
you focused your attention here by doing that really beautiful rim lighting. I mean, you have rim lighting here too, but
Yeah,
it's much more dramatic here. It's really
yeah. I was
pretty.
trying to really keep it focused right there, and so less rim lighting on the other
Yeah.
figures.
But then there's something
And
kind of
really,
odd about this painting that I think is cool in that you didn't
oh,
line the
nice.
crosses up. You staggered them.
Yes, and I like the idea that we're not looking down the road. I mean, we are looking down the road, but we're not looking at them all straight in the line and like we normally see them. I
Yeah.
like that we're seeing them from the side, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the fact that this is when it's all over. I saw this painting in Paris. It's in the d'Orsay, uh, and I think it's a Jerome, and it's awesome because it looks like just a landscape. It looks like a very dramatic landscape with a storm off in the distance, and these people are walking away, and you kind of really don't understand what's going on, and then you notice in the bottom right hand corner that there's these shadows cast up, and a strong contrast of these shadows, and you notice that they're crosses. You don't see any figures, you don't see Christ on the cross, you just see these people walking away. And that was the inspiration for this painting.
Hmm.
I thought, well, this would be really cool to like have the moment that that the storm is rolling in, and I think about the fact that this probably took a while, and so all of the excitement of all the people there mocking Christ and the thieves, they've all left except maybe the devout followers, and now even the women are leaving, and just like a lot more emotion, and left there with just a few people,
Hmm.
and this idea of the drama of it. I like that idea of like focusing on not like the beginning of it, but at the end where you went through all of this anguish, and to finally say it is finished, and I've completed the work.
Yeah. When you're telling that story about that painting, I thought, I wonder if Hitchcock was influenced by paintings like that. Picturing
Right.
like the shadow of the knife, instead of seeing
Yeah,
the actual knife.
you would think that they all were, right. All those
Yeah,
great
probably.
directors were influenced by great paintings.
So, a couple
So
questions about this painting. I love
okay,
how you varied the way they're hung because it adds a lot of
yeah,
interest. And
yeah,
obviously you did that on purpose. What
yeah.
was your what inspired that? What was your thinking when you decided how to hang these three people?
Well, I wanted everything going kind of leading to, you notice like our strong diagonals are all going right to this pinnacle of Christ right at the top, and
Hmm.
top of the painting. So I made sure that the crosses of the thieves weren't higher in perspective than Christ, and so that even the one that's in, and I like this idea of them not really neatly put on the cross either. The guy's got his arm
Yeah,
hanging
that's what I mean. One
over the
guy's up
top of the
above.
cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that from like a I don't it's definitely a Renaissance sculpture of these figures of the crucifix. I saw
Mm.
that where he had like arms kind of over the cross, and I thought, oh, that's kind of a really cool dramatic pose, which then in design wise leads you up to seeing Christ, and kind of this keeps bringing you back to the focal point of the image. And so that's why I designed it like that, so that those two figures kind of support this diagonal that's leading you up to Christ.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing is this is something I'm learning slowly, and that is that you can manipulate the direction of light to some degree and still make it convincing.
Yeah,
And I see that you've
yeah,
done that in this painting. For
yeah,
example,
a little bit.
maybe you weren't aware of it, but so
Maybe a little bit unintentionally, but
okay, well, I'm going to point it out and you tell
I
me.
did make a maquette. I made a maquette where I built these crosses, in little. I think I still have the model upstairs,
Oh, so
and
maybe this is a maquette problem. Did you bring the maquette outside?
no, I did not bring that. I lit
Oh,
it with the light inside.
okay. So
Yeah.
here it is. Then you might not have done this on purpose. So I
Okay.
apologize. It
Probably
doesn't matter
probably
because
didn't.
it doesn't matter because it works. But this is a
Okay.
so. Forgive me if I come off like I'm trying to teach you something. I could learn more from you than you could from me.
No, no, I'm happy. I'm happy to
But
learn.
one thing I've learned is that when you light something from inside, because the light
Yeah.
source is so close to the
Yeah.
subject, where the moon is, a million miles away,
Yeah.
not literally, but
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the light direction cones. It makes a cone shape.
Calm down. Yeah.
So the figures on the left of the light source get lit from the right, and the figures on the right of the light source get lit from the left. But if they were
Oh,
lit
I
from the
see.
sun or the moon, it's so far away, the light rays are essentially parallel. So everyone gets lit from the same side.
Everyone gets lit. Oh, I see.
Yeah. So what you've got
Yeah.
is
So you don't
rim
have
light
that.
on one side of her and on the opposite side with her, which makes sense if you had your light bulb right here. But it wouldn't make sense if you had the
Right.
moon right there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It works.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it reads that the narrative reads,
The
right?
narrative
Yeah.
reads. It works. It totally works. But I didn't, yeah.
So
So
you're
that's
saying there would be rim light on the back of that cross, is what you're
everyone would
saying,
be
right?
lit from the same direction. Yeah. It
Yeah.
seems counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
yeah, but that's because the sun is so far away. If you
Right.
imagine if you're standing on one end of a city block and I'm standing on the other end of the city block,
Yeah.
even though we're that far apart, we're still going to be lit from the same side because the sun is so
Right.
far away. Well, you're much less than a city block apart, and yet,
Yeah, and part of that, like those figures on the bottom right, were all, kind of shot in the studio too, to kind of get that. And so they're not,
well,
yeah.
I thought you did it on purpose anyway, so it works. It works great.
Well,
Yeah, it works fine.
no, that totally makes sense. And even if I shot that outside, I might have done it like this just to kind of keep
Yeah,
that drama where I wanted it.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No,
That's something
it's
I
definitely
learned
something
a while
I'm
back.
definitely learning more about the landscape and kind of how to paint the landscape for sure.
Yeah. It was I don't know if it was James Gurney that introduced that to me or if it was trial and error, but I do know he said that he takes his maquettes outside. I don't do
Ah,
that. I don't do that because the light isn't it changes from day to day, and sometimes I want my
yeah,
maquettes set up day after day after day and even into the night while I work on
yeah.
things. But what I'll do is I'll use multiple light sources or move the light source across a maquette as I observe each
Oh,
figure in order to
yeah.
get the look of parallel light, light
I
rays.
see.
But but I didn't, there was a long time
No,
where
that's
I never made that connection either. But I
I
didn't
like that.
realize
That's
that's what you were
wow.
doing though. So it still works like I said. So yeah, that's another one of
Yeah,
those things, multi-figure painting, man. There's things you don't even,
and there's so many things like and like tangents and things like that you got to try to kind of design and work out and then yeah, your color patterns are and things like that. It's just so hard, you
it
know,
is, it's so
designing all
hard.
your shapes.
Yeah, I just set up a maquette recently for a new painting I'm doing, and I used 7 lights to create the look of one light.
Oh,
It took
I'm gonna
seven.
do that more.
Yeah, it took
Um,
7 lights, and it looks really real, but it's weird because you would never know looking at it that it was 7 lights. I took 7 lights to make it look like
Make it
what it
look
would
like
look like outside. Yeah, it was crazy.
outside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
In some of these I did shoot like the man on the horse and the guys and that was all shot outside. But it was, trying to kind of mimic that same idea of that light that you're talking about. Um, but a lot of it too was trying to keep that drama in where I want the viewer to look.
yeah. And it's really cool. I want to pull this up. And because you have your maquette, was it during your studio tour? I think it was. I think
It might have was it?
yeah, it wasn't. Didn't your
No,
maquette?
I
Didn't
can't
you
I
walk
don't
past your
remember.
maquette? Where is your studio tour? Right here. I think you
Yeah.
walked past this maquette.
Come on in.
Did I?
Yeah, let's see.
I
Hold
think I
on.
do. I think I do. Yeah, because I have it set up upstairs. Yeah, this would
This
have been at
penny
the same
floor
time.
is awesome, by the way. Yeah, there it
There
is.
it is.
There it
Right.
is.
It's the maquette. Yeah.
Yep.
So you can
Yep.
see I was using just that one light source.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But the maquette really was just to kind of get what I want the figures to do.
Right.
I guess everyone in the foreground I did inside, but the rest, well, and I guess even even the figures on the cross, those I didn't use models for. Those were invented.
No kidding.
Just
Nice work. Those look
how
so
could
good.
I get? Yeah, how could I get that?
You
I think I had
invented
a
these
little bit of
three?
reference. For the most part, I think I had a friend of mine like kind of pose in the pose for me, but I had to kind of like make the lighting feel a little bit more correct on it. But yeah,
Wow,
definitely
those look really good.
the figure Christ I had to just go off of the maquette
This
and
little
then
this
put in
little
all the
detail, the
flesh.
fingers is so interesting. The lighting on this is just so good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I think
turned
this
out better
painting's a
than
home
I
run.
expected. Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice. All right, let's see. One of the things I love about your work, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you've won multiple Portrait Society of America awards for drawing. Have you not?
I
At
have.
least one.
I
Yeah,
have.
you kick
Yeah.
butt with
Yeah.
drawing. I don't know where
Yeah.
you learned how to draw like this, but your drawing style is among my
Well,
favorite of
well, well,
anybody.
thanks, man. And that, yeah, yeah, I was first kind of heard about or was kind of turned on to the work of Nikolai Feshin through Whitaker, and
Yeah.
and I try to kind of like Feshin is a huge inspiration for me in his drawings, and just the kind of the way that he would kind of put those sharp lines in after he's kind of built everything up, and then he would put those lines in after he's kind of built up the form, and
Yeah.
that's yeah, and that's kind of been my inspiration for my drawings. Um, it's yeah, it's interesting because drawing is, I hate to say this, but it's so much easier than painting.
It's so much easier, but it's
You know what I
still
mean?
hard. It's still hard, but
It's still hard, but you don't
yeah,
have to deal with anything other than form, right? Light and
right.
shadow.
Yeah.
And then I'm also, when I'm in these drawing portraits, I'm really strongly thinking about design, just trying to squint at it and what does that look like as an abstract thing, and um and I know that you have a strong appreciation for abstract paintings, and so that
Hmm.
and I like that idea of it, like this abstraction becoming a realism,
Yeah, me
and
too.
that's really been a lot of my inspiration when it comes to drawings.
Hmm.
I try to do that in painting, but it doesn't seem to um, be as successful.
Oh, I don't know about
Like
that.
like this one, the hair is just this big abstraction, but then the face appears inside of it. I like that.
You ever juggled before?
No, I've tried to juggle. I can't. I
Okay.
can't juggle.
Well, I learned to juggle when I was a kid, and I learned how to juggle three balls relatively quickly, but I
Okay.
never could get good at four. Just adding one more
Um,
ball made such a
yeah.
difference. So that analogy
Yeah.
rings really true, and I use it for my students all the time. Drawing is like
Yeah.
juggling three balls,
Yeah.
and painting is like juggling four, and the jump from three to four is so dramatic.
I would say painting's like juggling six. You know what I
Maybe,
mean?
maybe.
It feels like, to me, it feels
Yeah,
way more.
yeah.
Because once you kind of start throwing color in the mix, and then how color temperature affects form and light,
And
it's
paint
it's it's a whole
texture,
nother ballgame.
having to manage
And the
the
paint
paint texture and
texture,
the direction of strokes, and
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, but if you look at my painting sketches, I'm trying to go for a similar thing with as the drawings, is that if you go in like sketches and studies, you can see that I'm trying to kind of like have an interesting design in those sketches, and then try to kind of follow up with solid drawing.
I don't see a lot of nudes on your Instagram, so this is nice
No,
to
I
see
don't. I
some.
don't. I don't. I don't put a lot of nudes out there.
It's
Um,
beautiful.
but I do have quite a
Wait,
few
what's this
nude
doing
studies.
here?
That one, I don't know why I have that one. That's a demo drawing I did for a while back. I don't know why I have that in there, but that's
Oh,
a
okay.
drawing.
It's
That should
for
go in the
those
drawing
listening,
section.
it's a drawing in what I thought was a painting section. So I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't. I guess because it was a study sketch for a workshop. I don't know why I have that. I need to move it. I need to move it over to the
Wait, what happened
drawing section.
there? I apologize. What? So
That took you to what did you click
I
on?
clicked on
That's got some
Orchid
weird
and it
link.
goes here. I want to see that.
Just click on the image. Can you click on the
Yeah,
image?
I think you got a
Yeah,
broken link.
I got a broken link.
Yeah, I want to see
Hey,
that painting.
I
They're
was
toying
just
with me.
you inspired me to update my website, so now I got to fix some things after I was
Yeah.
just working on
And
this.
I really like that painting. I'm like, show me that painting.
Ah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
Oh man, you
I just
definitely
think,
have it in your that the same quality in your studies that you do in your drawings.
what's that?
You the
Say it
same
again.
quality of just that energetic paint and movement.
Yeah.
You have it in your drawings and your studies for sure.
Well, thank you.
But
Yeah. That's what I'm going
don't
for.
you think that a multi-figure painting and a more complex painting requires a slightly different treatment at least? Or not necessarily
It
requires,
does.
but
It does.
it
But
at
I'm
least
learning more
warrants
and
it.
more that I'm learning more and more that that thumbnail effect is so important. You know, going back to that color study
Hmm.
or those just simple shapes, and learning that from the great illustrators like Howard Pyle and Harvey Dunn, and you know, I just looking at some of those Leyendecker paintings that are just unbelievable. It's just those simple shapes put together just makes some really interesting images, and realizing that yeah, multi-figure it's so much more complex to solve. Like how do I get what I want in those simple shapes to then read in a more complex, detailed way? But it all
Hmm.
comes back to impression, right? And that's what
Hmm.
we're trying to capture here in the studies. It's just the impression. Yeah.
You know, there's one on Instagram because I was looking at your Instagram right before we started that I
Yeah.
was really impressed with because I don't know if you're not a painter, if you would recognize how difficult this is and how much of a home run this painting is. Let me see if I can find it. It's a
What are you
study of
talking
a
about?
guy in France who owned the place you were living in France. Oh, right here.
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah,
staying in
yeah.
France. This
That
lighting
was
is so subtle and so
yes. I was
sensitive, and you
really
hit a home run on that.
yeah. Well, thank you because I really felt I told you earlier how I like the moment I finish a painting I really hate it. This one I like, oh, I got it. I captured it. And yeah, I really was excited about this painting.
Yeah, and the
I just felt
glasses
like
are so simple. It just, you nailed it. Yeah, you really did.
thanks. Yeah, and it was the idea of just capturing those simple shapes and I was really I wish I had I don't have that one photographed so you can see it closer. But if you look at it closer, it's just everything is suggested. It's just everything is very very simple, and I like that because it was just the fact that I captured the impression because we this was the owner of the property, so we were just painting from the light that was this was inside the mill, this old
Mm-hmm.
mill that's 200 years old, and it was just light coming from the door and that kind of cool light that's coming in. So anyway,
Yeah. You know, and
well, thanks.
I squinted him, and this is why it's so difficult. When I squinted him, it's really hard to distinguish the two light sources because you've got the one coming from the window or door, and then you've got
Yeah,
the ambient light or whatever is coming from the left.
yeah.
And you managed to separate, but still maintain
Yeah.
that subtlety. You managed to separate the door light from the ambient light. But when I squint at him,
Hmm.
I almost don't see a separation, but you managed to pull it
Right.
off.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah. I'm
really
always,
hard one.
yeah, this, my students, I'm always telling them like, make sure that you're separating your lights from your darks, really have that clear separation. And,
Hmm.
even if you don't see it as much, you need to kind of get that in there. And so I think that's part of it. It's just making sure that I'm separating my lights from my darks and really getting, giving the viewer an idea of a clear idea of where the main light source is coming.
Yeah, that I think that's the key that understanding that you have. Because a student would might say, there are no darks. What am I supposed to do? There
Right,
are no
right.
darks. It's lit from everywhere. And you're saying, no, figure
Yeah.
out what your main light source is, and everything else is
Yes.
your darks.
Has yeah, has to kind of follow alongside that.
Yeah.
Subtlety is the hardest thing for any artist to get because the moment we start going for subtlety, we go for everything becomes the same value, right?
Hmm.
And so the moment we start bringing values closer together, it gets really difficult to maintain that separation. So a lot of beginning students can easily, get lights and darks. It's just finding that subtle of really compressing those values. That's where the challenge is, and it just requires you seeing so much. Uh, you have to really look at it and really study what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nice. Um, let's go back to your website again. I want to look at some of your more finished paintings that
Yeah,
that aren't historical.
that are
So
not
I want to pull out a
historical.
couple that are my favorites first. And then if you have any
Well,
that
I'm
you'd like to
curious what
talk
your
about.
favorites are.
All right, let's see. Well, this one right here is literally
Oh yeah,
100% my
yeah.
favorite painting you've done. If I could
Well,
have
thank
bought
you.
this painting, I would be like just like put candles around it and just have like little moments every day with it, you know? Like it is
And I'm
so
not
good.
sure.
It
I'm
is
not sure what made that painting so successful either. It's partially the pose, or obviously it's inspired by a Thayer painting using
yeah.
using
I don't know. That's the
Thayer's
problem is
theme.
sometimes you can't even define it. It's
But
just
uh,
part of it is the
and a lot of
figure.
people think like it's a big painting. It's not a big painting. It's 14 by 18. It's that head is only a few inches tall. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even a couple inches. Um, I think it's the drama of it. I don't know. I remember when I was painting it, that eye in the shadow, the eye furthest away from us, is I left it. I had kind of blocked it in, and then I was about to kind of finish that eye. I wish we could zoom in. I think you can zoom in. I remember going back in, or I was thinking I was going to finish that eye that's in the shadow,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah, it's not even there.
yeah, and I remember thinking that I need to finish that and complete that kind of thought there. But then the more I looked at it, the more it kind of gave it this idea of it added to the emotion or the kind of feeling of the scene and her emotions, the fact that the eye is kind of red, and I don't know, it kind of worked. And I felt like if I it's this idea of Richard Smith in his book, you know, that you got to know when to stop.
Hmm.
And luckily, I stopped, and I felt like that actually made it
Yeah, and then you've
just
got
more
other things I don't
intriguing.
that are really interesting that you don't see all the time, and like this hard edge right here. And you
Yeah,
really, even this eye is less finished than you often will see, and it just really worked. The way
right.
the iris just sort of fades into the white of the eye.
Yeah, this idea of suggesting things, I'm all for that. You know, I'm a big fan of Sargent and a lot of those, 19th century artists, you know, Zorn and Soroy and those, and I like that idea of suggesting things
Yeah,
and not over painting things, which I have done. I have definitely done that where I felt like taking things too far. But maybe that's what kind of like drew you to this one, is that it's got that nice balance of of finished and unfinished, where you feel a lot of stuff in with
yeah,
your
I
eye.
think that's probably
Yeah.
it. And it has guts, you know.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know if I'd have
Sometimes
the
it's guts,
courage.
sometimes it's me just being naive,
No,
but
I don't
sometimes it's
know.
guts.
I don't know if I'd have the courage to do certain things like over here, which is so beautiful. Because
Yeah.
do you ever, when you're painting, think about other painters and go, would they do this? Like, is this even allowed?
All the time.
Like, there's some
All the time.
rules, like a sport in basketball. Like, is this a double dribble equivalent in painting?
Yeah.
Like, is this even allowed?
Yeah.
You do
Yeah.
feel that way?
Yeah, I do feel that way. I remember early on, you know, studying with that first professor of mine, like he would call it the art Gestapo would come in and tell him, you can't do this. I remember him using that term, the art Gestapo, and saying, you can't do this. And so that actually kind of helped free me up of like things that, you know, try to break the rules and do things that maybe, shouldn't work, but then do, you know.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's me just experimenting and playing with things and allowing things to go and not having to feel like I have to. As an artist, sometimes you feel like you got to prove that you can render this all the way that it needs to be, and then having that humility to say, does will the piece be better if I don't?
You
You
know
know?
what though? I think you're full of it on that one because you proved you could do it. on the hands and the
Oh
faces.
yeah, yeah. I guess.
But no, what I mean
Well,
is,
but you just
I'm not
you
calling you
just
out.
pointed out zooming in there. It's not like that. It looks fully rendered and
Yeah.
finished that eye from this distance, um, but up close it's not. And
Well, I
that's
mean
the
that as a
paintings I love too.
compliment.
I mean,
I
you look at
mean,
the sergeants, and they look so like photographic almost, right? When
yeah,
you
that's
see them
true.
just
They're
from
not
feet away.
that finished. They're
And
not
they're
that
not
finished.
that finished when you get up close. It's just he's really solved all of the values and his color relationships so well.
Yeah, but this painting, I think that's what I like about it. It demonstrates, and because I'm glad you said what you just said about sometimes we feel like we have to prove that
Yes.
we can make this thing really realistic and that we're great craftsmen.
Yeah, we
I
put
feel
ourselves
that
too much.
pressure all the time. But what you did, and this is why I say you're full of it, I mean that as a compliment because I think you're just being
Sure.
humble in saying that. And that is that yeah, even though this is loose, it shows your chops in the face and hands. But then
Okay, thank you.
by contrast, it also shows your bravery in leaving this alone and just your sense of design and aesthetics, good taste. So it's
Yeah.
like, in a way, yeah, you had to be willing to let go of your ego in a way, but what ended up
Yeah.
happening in the end was you ended up creating something that just shows a broader range of skill than if you had rendered the whole thing. That's how I see it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
So
thanks,
that's what I
Jeff.
mean by you're
That's
full
an
of it.
amazing compliment.
Yeah, I wish that painting was
Coming from one
available.
of my art heroes, I think you know when I was talking earlier when you peaked, I think I just peaked right now. I think there's my peak.
I'm glad, man. I'm glad. Okay, so another one is I just got to look for them. It's not that I'm struggling to find great paintings here, but I know already what they are because I've followed you for years. But well, first of all, I will point out that one that you won in the Portrait Society, if I can find it right here, is also one of
Yeah,
my
yeah, youthful
favorites,
decadence. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that is just gorgeous. And you
Well, thank you.
won. What did you win with this? I can't remember.
I won. I think I won second place. Second place with this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you know what's cool about
yeah,
this one? It's got this 19th century look with the dress you chose, the couch you chose,
yeah,
and then she's got her cell phone. At least that's what it looks like she's holding.
yeah. She is. She's holding a cell
So
phone.
it's
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
contemporary and yet,
yeah.
and I don't know, an
I love
homage
that. I
to
love that. I love
the
that
19th
idea. I think
century.
you and I think a lot alike. That idea of, going back to your earlier work with that idea of incorporating some type of modern or contemporary aspect into this idea of classical realism. I love that.
Yeah, me
And
too.
of course, this painting was inspired by Ramon Casas, his painting of decadent youth, and and but I really wanted to kind of put my own take on it, and this is one of those where it kind of pays off to really go the extra mile. I had brought a model in and I had photographed her, and I wish I had an image of that, and started painting it. It just wasn't working, and I ended up sanding down. I sanded down the entire face after it was done. Brought a
Really?
whole new model in, and this is actually one of my students, former students. She's now studying at GCA, um, and photographed her, and she was way better for what I was after. But if I felt like if I would have kept going with the other one, it would have been okay, but it wouldn't have kind of had this same effect, and probably not have been as successful as this painting.
That's the other thing, not to go back to this angel painting again, but I am 100% believer that who you choose as a painter to put in your paintings
Yeah,
is as important as what actors you choose to put in your movie.
right.
It's so
Absolutely.
important that you get the right face.
Yes.
For yeah,
Yes.
for your character.
And I'm finding that in these these multi-figure ones I'm doing is that you really got to put the time into finding the right model, the right look
Hmm.
for it to really work for the narrative that you're trying to tell.
Yeah. And I
Because
suppose
my
that's
model
somewhat
before was
subjective, but
my model before in that painting was a lot older, and this was a young student. So this idea of youthful decadence, plays a lot better. You know,
hmm.
and I had like fabric made and things like that to kind of really stage that whole painting. So
Wow. So here's another one that I like a lot.
Well, thank you. And again, there's a phone as well. I called it unread.
Yeah, right there.
Because
Yep.
what's the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning, right? Most of
Oh, it's
us are
so
checking our
sad.
phone.
I know.
And this one was staged. I was stayed at a hotel, and it's not my wife; it's a model. But the thing is, I like the look of the hotel. I realize now my perspective is a little wonky and weird, but there's an old painting, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I like the look in the hotel, but then I brought a model in the studio and then photographed her to kind of get the look on the
Oh,
bed that
you
I
mixed
wanted.
it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And then this one brings back memories. This is an older one.
Yes, that was another Portrait Society.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what award that had, but this one was a funny story because I'm sure you had these experiences where you're out wherever and you see somebody and you think they'd be a great model for a painting, so you approach them
Mm-hmm.
and I was at a restaurant just down in Pleasant Grove where we used to live, and she was a waitress. So I reached out to her, and she had this like long brown hair that kind of looked like a. She kind of looked like one of Waterhouse's models. I thought, oh, I'd really love to use her for like a classical painting, and so she showed up in the studio just having gone to one of those um, cosmetology schools where they like cut your hair and they just dyed it bright red, and she was a bit nervous and kind of like I don't know if she like was really she didn't really seem like she was that comfortable, and so I just went with it and used that kind of a idea, and I called the painting Sliver. It just kind of seems like she's just uncomfortable, and she was nervous too because the first time she'd ever like posed for a model, and all those aspects of it just really kind
Mm-hmm.
of played into it,
And she looks
made
so
it a more
young.
interesting narrative. Yeah, she was. I mean, she's like probably 18, maybe
Hmm. Yeah.
17,
Yeah,
18.
you can
Maybe.
see the anxiety in her face. You really captured that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's one in red that I saw at Springville many years ago. Do you have that in here? I don't see it.
Maybe I did. Scroll down. Is it that one in red? Which one in red are we talking about?
Okay, I love this one too. We'll come
The running
back.
late is one? No, no. Maybe I don't have it in there.
No, maybe I'm thinking of a different.
It
Maybe I'm
seemed
mixing
like.
up paintings again. Oh, right here.
Is it
Is
this
this
one?
not? Maybe this wasn't in Springville, but this is the
It
one. Yeah.
wasn't in Springville, but it was part of a solo show I did with Principal Gallery
Oh,
years
okay.
ago.
And it's the same
Same
girl.
model.
Same girl.
Same model. Yeah.
She's more comfortable
Same
this
model.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt like, yeah, as we kind of got into the photo shoot, this was later on in the shoot, taking photos, she seemed to relax a lot more.
Yeah. And then I want to point out these. These were very different for you,
Oh,
but I
right.
remember when you did them thinking they were really cool. And this is Howard Lyon,
Yeah.
who's a fellow artist friend of ours.
Yeah. Well, and it's this idea of music, and it's a diptych. So if you look the next painting next to it is the one that goes with it. If you notice, the headphones that she's wearing connect into his electronic device, and
Oh,
her electronic device is connected into his. Do you notice that?
yeah, and I
And
didn't, but
so
now I do.
so this idea how music connects us, because this was a commission. Well, it's kind of a funny story because I did a painting years ago called Adoration of the Hi-Fi. It was a Tondo painting of I used my sister-in-law, and she's listening to headphones, and I had kind of done a different design with gold leaf in the middle. And this cruise line that was building a new cruise ship, I think it's Old Holland um, cruise line, having an art and music cruise ship. They said, we want to commission you to paint some paintings for our ship, and we love this painting. Is it available? And I said no, and they said, well, will you paint another one or paint us two? And I said sure. And I love the idea of then exploring this idea of music. And so even the halo that's around them is like this equalizer bar that's moving up and down,
Hmm.
like music. And two, like she's got tattoos, and she obviously looks like maybe she's from a different crowd than Howard. And so
Mm-hmm.
this idea of how music connects us, like two different types of people. And yeah, yeah. And so so right now these paintings are on, I don't remember, I think it's the new Statendam cruise ship that's
No
somewhere
way. That's a
in the
trip.
Atlantic. I don't know,
That's
but
really cool. And tell me about the surface they're painting on it. It looks like it's an actual record, but I don't think it is.
no, that's the I had Red Ashby Frames. He made the frame, and so I had him make that frame. So that's the frame that goes around it. That looks like a record, and so it's just painted on linen and
Oh. Oh,
painted
so
in
the
a
painting goes to this point.
yes, yes,
Oh, it
yeah.
almost
The
looks like the
painting,
painting goes right to the edge.
no, no, no. That's just the frame,
Oh, that is
and so the
cool.
frame was meant to look like a record. Yeah,
Yeah, that
to
is
kind of
way
add this.
cool.
Yeah. No, I thought that was really, that's one of those really fun things going back as a graphic designer. I love the idea of somebody coming to me and giving me like the parameters of what they need and then me solving that. Sometimes it's so hard to come up with an idea when you just have you can paint anything. I
Right.
love it when you come to me and say these are the things that I need, figure it out. And then that narrows it down and then I can actually find a solution inside of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes just giving you anything isn't as helpful.
Yeah.
But then the other Tondo painting was painted for a show
Wait, is that
that
this
exile.
one here?
Yeah, that was just me wanting to really play with the design of a figure, and I turned it into a narrative of 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 this idea of psyche in the and but
That's
really it was just
beautiful.
more trying to just design a figure um, in an interesting way. So,
Yeah, that's gorgeous. Well, man, we've
thank
been
you.
at this for a while, and I I
Oh,
appreciate it.
oh
Yeah.
wow, we have.
Yeah, we
We
have.
have.
We
Well, it's
have.
been fun talking. I feel like it's flown by
I know. It's been
chatting.
a great conversation, but we're not done yet. I got one more question. This is my last
Okay.
question for you. So,
Okay.
what if you could give one piece of advice that you wish you had to an aspiring artist, what would it be?
One piece of advice. I would probably. I mean, how do I say this in a um, I'd probably say that I just it's interesting because we're all thinking about different things as in different points in our career. But I just posted this quote by Winston Churchill, which says, "To improve is to change, to perfect is to change often." Because I think early on in a career, when we're learning as an artist, a teacher will tell you something like, "Don't use black," is kind of one of the main things, right? Don't use black. Don't ever use it. And that makes sense in certain ways. But as a young student, you might take that as dogma and like that's the only thing you should do. I think you should. Um, always be humble and be willing to learn, but then question your processes and your practices often so that you can then learn what's perfect for you. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? Like
Mm-hmm.
like really try to take how you do it and how you perform, um, and maybe those things that some advice that you got from a teacher or some other artist was really helpful for a time, but then maybe you need to then uh, change and find how you can be more efficient or better by not always. I just feel like I think sometimes about some of the advice I get, and it's kind of some of those things, well intended, have maybe hung me up for a few years, and and I think back and realize that maybe I should have been more open to try new things, to really experiment, and just like what we're talking about in the painting, break the rules and try to experiment and try things. Um, in marketing, that idea of machine gun marketing, try lots of things, but try them quick, do them fast, and try so that you're not slowing yourself down. I
Yeah.
Right now in my career, I'm really trying to find a way to paint faster. I I really don't want to, ideally, I guess in my career, I'd love to get to the point where I'm only doing one painting a year. But what I want to really learn how to do is be like those illustrators and really learn how to paint faster. And that's part of me then changing my process. Is like we were talking earlier. Is like what can I do in my process that's different that will help me be more efficient and paint faster. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe that means rejecting some of the things that I was told I should be doing.
Right. Yeah, I
I don't know.
just
I don't
interviewed.
know if that's a great answer,
No, it's a great
but
answer. Well, let me put it this way. It's already been said
okay.
multiple times. So obviously
Yeah.
it's something worth saying. I just interviewed Nicholas Yoribi. I hope I'm not
Yeah.
slaughtering that. And
Yeah, I
he
don't know how
said
to
the
say
same
this.
thing.
Uribe? Yeah,
Uribe.
I don't know how to say
He
it.
he said he said throughout the interview, but then he also talked about it at the end. He said, "Oh, just do everything your teacher tells you and trust them. But
Yes.
then when you're done, then you just have to like not throw it all away, but just experiment. And as you put it, don't take it as dogma. And I
Yeah.
think that to me, that's the key. Trust your teacher when,
Yeah.
if it's a trustworthy
Yeah.
teacher, right? Get a good
Right.
teacher,
If it's yeah.
trust the
Yeah. Yeah.
teacher, and
Yeah.
then find
Yeah.
your own way later. So
Yeah.
I think it's great advice.
I didn't realize like yeah that he kind of gave that similar advice. I
Yeah,
think
he
about
did.
it like just a quick example is when I studied with Bill Whitaker, he used lead white, and I kind of and his reasoning for that was that all the old masters use lead white, and it's the only thing you should use, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It still does now, but then I realized titanium still it works really well, and it can work really well for like landscape painting. It gets you that kind of light effects where you're trying to really bring up your lights. And I'm realizing that you just have to change your colors on your palette to work with titanium, because I was using with lead white, I'm using very weak colors to work with the weak tone of the lead, which actually works great for flesh because it gives you this translucent quality. But you can also capture that if you're pumping up the
Oh
chroma
my
in the rest
gosh.
of your palette,
Dude,
right?
that's the second thing I've learned today. Okay, I got to tell you
Yeah.
this to show my
What's that?
ignorance again after 20 something years of painting. That's just embarrassing.
What's
So
that?
I was in the same place. I hear all these people saying lead white, lead
Yeah.
white. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like a religion. But
Right.
I tend to touch my face and stuff. If you notice in the podcast, I notice when I see my own
Right.
podcast,
Yeah.
I'm like
Yeah.
this
I'm doing
all
the
the
same.
time. I touch my face all the
Yeah.
time. So I'm
Yeah.
so concerned about, see, I'm doing it right now. I'm so
Yeah.
concerned about
Right.
getting lead poisoning. So I won't, so I've tried it for 6 months, then I get off of it. Then I try it for 6 months like a
Yeah.
drug, then I get off of it.
Yeah.
And what I've found
Well,
is because I have a really chromatic palette, that when I use lead white, I have to use so much white that I go through a tube
you
in a
you have to use a
study.
ton of it. Yeah, you have to use a ton of it.
It's
Yeah.
obnoxious. So I actually
I
prefer
really think
titanium.
I really think Sargent, if he had titanium, he would have used it. I was in Boston in that room where all those paintings of Sargents are, and there's a painting of a mother and a daughter, and there's a chair, and on
Hmm.
the to get the light effect that he was looking for on the arm of the chair, he just had this huge glob of like light lead white to get the bright effect that he wanted. And I think if he had titanium, he wouldn't have needed to use so much paint. It's
Yeah.
cool to have that thick paint, but at the same time, if he had titanium, I think he would have embraced it.
Don't you think it
You
worked
know,
for Bill because Bill was such a thin, delicate painter?
yes.
And
And his palette, he used a lot of umbers, a lot of those earth tones, which I've started actually using cad yellow, which is more of an orange. And I've never used that in the past. And
mm,
so it's just experimenting and trying new things, I think is I think you're absolutely right that you need to listen to and not have such an ego as a student as you're growing and developing as an artist. But at the same time, you got to figure out what works for you and and
right.
and not get hung up on these things, because I've had people, even students come back and say to me, "Well, you told me that I should be doing this," and I'm like, "Well, well, maybe that works at it for a time, but now maybe it doesn't. Be
Hmm.
okay with rejecting some of the stuff. How can an actor make it in Hollywood?" And he says to him, he says, "Well, when people ask me that question, they're looking for like a formula, like do this and this and this, and that'll make you a great actor." He said, "I simply tell them, be so good they can't ignore you." And I
Yep.
love that, because it's just like if you focus on doing it really, really well, somebody's going to pay attention. But you
Yeah.
have to really push yourself to do it really, really well. And it's not, and like Steve Martin said, it's not an answer that people want to hear because it's so
Hmm.
vague, right? It's not the formula of to be a successful artist, but at the same time, it's how you become successful. It's why we build the maquettes, and we go and we get we scrape down the painting and we get a new model and bring them in, it's all for to make it as best as, yeah, just make it the best we can possibly make it.
Yeah. I don't know if you've
Then-
experienced this, but to me, the worst insult is when someone comes in my studio and says, wow, you've had a lot of success. You must be a good business person.
You must be a good business person.
Yeah.
I don't think any artist
I must
is
be
a good business person.
No, none of
maybe
us
some
are.
Of them are acting, but they're rare.
And I'm like, so what you're saying is that it would take really good business to sell this crap, It's like,
Right.
but because I'm a believer, if you produce a good product, you shouldn't have to be that good of a business person, right?
Yeah, and that's what I believe in. I believe in that. Yeah.
And there's
That's
actually
exactly
a
what
book. There's actually a book, and I rudely looked at my phone while you were talking, but it's because there is a book I listened to some time ago that I think actually has that title. Yeah, right there. So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport.
There it is. Yeah. Why skills trump passion and the quest for work you love.
Yeah.
Right?
So Good They Can't Ignore You, and it's by Cal Newport. So I'd recommend that.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily to you. I think you got the idea, but I don't know. I listened to it. I have the same belief. You might want to consider that. But yeah,
Well, and
I believe
I'm
it.
naturally a perfectionist, which kind of drives my wife crazy sometimes.
Yeah,
But
same.
but it's a kind of natural tendency too for me, anyways, to try to, like, no matter what I do, to make it the very best,
Mhm.
And I think that's really been helpful for me in my career, even if it is frustrating sometimes for people around me.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, I often equate art to sports. And if you think
Yeah.
about it, was Michael Jordan thinking about who he could get to know and,
Right.
schmoozing with
Networking.
people and networking?
Right.
And I'm not
Yeah.
saying those things aren't important, but what was he really focused on? Becoming the best basketball player, in my
Yeah.
opinion, who ever lived, but that's beside the point. But, but
Right.
that's it. That was the point, and that's why he still is a legend 20 years after retirement. Has it been that long? Anyway,
Yeah.
sometime after
Well,
retirement.
and I'm a big golfer. I like to golf, and so Tiger Woods. I mean,
Yeah.
that guy, like, he won the Masters when he was 21 by 19 strokes. Like, just killed everybody. What was the first thing he did? He changed his swing entirely because he felt like he could get better. And
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. It's
That's
not
amazing.
about the schmoozing. It's about being so good they can't ignore you.
Yeah.
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 Good advice. Man,
Well,
I'm glad
thanks.
we finally got this done. This was a pleasure.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I'm glad. Yeah, I feel bad. I mean, it could have been months ago, but it was my fault.
No, it's all good. Save the best for last. At least last
Yeah,
until the
that's-
next guest.
That's right. You've had some amazing artists on this podcast. I just feel hugely honored to be here and to talk to you. Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks, man. I'm honored that these people are actually saying yes, and you included. So appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.